recognize the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition to move the Opposition Day motion.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move that whereas both Ontario Works, OW, and Ontario Disability Support Program, ODSP recipients live in legislated deep poverty, and whereas people on fixed incomes are forced to make untenable choices between buying food and paying rent just to survive, and the Ford government's meagre $58 increase to ODSP rates and freezing of OW rates at $733 a month do not keep pace with actual cost of living, and whereas inflation is at a 40-year high, groceries are more expensive than ever, and basic expenses like hydro and gas bills continue to increase, and whereas average rents alone are significantly more than the entire monthly payments received by social assistance recipients, and affordable housing waitlists in some communities are up to 10 years long and even longer for people who need supportive housing, and whereas the Ford government's current approach to social assistance rates is untenable and denies recipients a dignified life. Therefore, the Legislative Assembly calls on the Ford government to immediately double Ontario Works and Ontario Disability Support Program payments to recipients as part of an overall strategy to reduce poverty in Ontario. This is addressed to the Premier.
Mr. Tabuns has moved Opposition Day number 1. I look to the Leader of His Majesty's Loyal Opposition to lead off the debate.
Okay. Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I move this motion because the impact of the government's failure to actually provide supports for people with disability, people on ODSP and OW, causes huge suffering, great suffering for those who are dependent on those sources of income. Doubling rates for ODSP and OW recipients would mean lifting people with disabilities out of the deep poverty they currently live in and even bumping their incomes above the poverty line. We know that living with a disability has additional costs and rates should reflect that. People living with disabilities are much more likely to live in poverty than those without disabilities, according to Statistics Canada. People living with disabilities earn less and are typically underemployed compared to those who do not have a disability. 4 in 10 persons with disabilities aged 15 years and over living in poverty go without aids, devices, or prescription medicines because the costs are too high. Lack of access to a car and sufficient storage in the home make it hard for people to find and buy cheaper grocery options or to buy in bulk. Time constraints can limit cooking options and the capacity to substitute for healthier alternatives. Every day, individuals and families on social assistance have to make difficult choices to meet their basic needs. Do I put gas in my car, or do I pay my hydro bill? Do I buy the medicine that I need, or do I heat my home? Do I pay my rent, or do I put food on the table? Can I purchase socks or soap after paying my bills? And frankly, Speaker, beyond those particular expenses, I've had people literally say to me, when I'm thinking of coming to your office, I have to think through whether I can walk there because I can't necessarily afford the bus. People are making decisions at that level, a level that no one should have to go through. No one should have to go through. People on social assistance are struggling, and they have been for years. As soon as he came into the office, Premier Ford denied ODSP recipients their 3% increase. He continued to deny recipients any increase for years after, also denying increases to OW recipients and cutting the basic income pilot that helped participants get out of poverty. When this government finally and reluctantly announced increases to ODSP rates, it was only 5%. Our caucus was calling for a doubling of ODSP and OW rates then, and we're renewing that call today. We know that the government's minuscule increase is inadequate and it's left many people out. The small increases come at a time of dramatically increasing inflation, resulting in an affordability crisis facing all Ontarians. The cost of living has risen dramatically. People are struggling to pay their bills and purchase weekly groceries. Rates were insufficient before, and they're pitiful now. Rents are high, food prices are through the roof, and the government is telling people to live on crumbs. No one can reasonably be expected to live on just over $1,200 a month or if you're on Ontario Works, $733 a month. Speaker, it was interesting to me to watch when the Minister of Finance was asked, could you live on $1,200 a month? And he's generally a pretty straightforward guy. You know, I can talk with him, we can disagree, I can talk with him. But it was interesting, he would not answer that question. He would not answer that question.
Can't.
And one has to presume that he's looked at the numbers. He knows what it costs to rent a room. He would know what it would cost to rent a studio apartment. And he realized it is not viable. It does not work. People are in an impossible situation. And thus he did not answer that question. The meager 5% increase amounts to only $58 more per month for recipients of ODSP. Even with the government's proposed increase, people on ODSP must limit their spending to $522 per month for shelter and $706 for everything else. That is not workable. If someone is lucky and they have been able to stay in a unit for a number of years that is covered by rent control, then it's possible that they're paying a rent that's less than $1,000 a month. Possible. And I can't speak for all of Ontario, but I know in London it's gotten a lot tougher. Hamilton, Burlington, Sudbury apparently, Toronto for sure. All around, people are finding that $1,000 a month is not getting you much at all. Maybe a room, maybe a room. And so people trying to live on this are left with virtually no money at all. I talk to constituents who, again, in those rent-controlled units, are paying $1,000 to $1,100 a month, leaving $100 a month for everything else. That is a prescription for misery. It's a prescription for ill health. It's a prescription for a society that's meaner and crueler than it needs to be, because we're not a poor society. We are not a poor society. I have to ask, where are people going to live on those levels? And people on OW must restrict themselves even more. They receive no increase. Rates continue to be frozen at $733 per month. I've talked to people who have come into my office complaining about people on welfare, and I say, could you live on $733 a month? And they can't believe it's that low. They can't believe that they would be set adrift with $733 a month and told, do your best to survive. Give it a shot. Good luck to you. ODSP and OW recipients are tired, and this government needs to start listening to them and to double the rate. Speaker, people are literally one stroke, one traffic accident, one fall away from losing everything, and losing it very rapidly, they find, very rapidly. A few years ago, I was talking to a man who had been a senior law enforcement official in Eastern Ontario. His wife had died in a tragic accident. He had difficulty dealing with it. He started to drink. He lost everything within a few years and then was trying to survive on these rates. He wound up camping in a tent in the Don Valley year-round. Wow. People can lose everything. And when they come to ask, so what support is there? What support is there to keep me alive? They find it's not there. It's just not there. Other people come to me and say, you know, I'm in my late 50s, I've lost my job, can't get CPP, I do have a minor disability. Is there a program that will allow me to continue to at least live in my home? And I have to tell them the reality. And the shock on people's faces is quite something, quite something. An opinion piece published this week in the Toronto Star by co-chairs of the ODSP Action Coalition, themselves social assistance recipients, and the Income Security Advocacy Centre asked an important question: when is 5% not 5%? And the answer lies between the lines of Premier Ford's plans to increase ODSP rates. 5% is not 5% if you have specific dietary needs, are pregnant, or live in a remote community. ODSP also offers discretionary benefits for a variety of specific client circumstances, I'm quoting, such as special diet and remote community allowances. Although not everyone on ODSP qualifies for these benefits increase by 0%. For example, a single person on ODSP who receives the maximum basic needs amount and basic shelter amount, approximately $1,169 a month, who requires a special diet related to a medical condition and who is pregnant, is not going to see a 5% increase to their total ODSP income. The 5% becomes just over 4%. 5% is not 5% when you must go through Ontario Works before accessing Ontario Disability Support Program. Ontario Works is meant to provide temporary financial support for those who cannot find a job, those fleeing violent personal situations, and other situations that qualify. The average Ontarian might be surprised to learn that many of those OW, those Ontario Works clients, are people with disabilities trying to access ODSP. They come to my office. They're desperate. They can't hold it together on 733, and they're finding that it is very difficult to actually make the jump, even though they fully qualify, make the jump to get ODSP, which in itself is completely inadequate, but they're even worse shape on OW. The ODSP applicant may be waiting to receive medical assessments that would confirm eligibility, or they may face processing lags or appeal backlogs. While they wait, they're forced to live on $733 a month, the maximum amount for a single person on OW. That 5% rate increase becomes 0 because the Ford government did not increase rates for all social assistance recipients. The rates are not good enough, Mr. Speaker, and we are seeing the impacts of low social assistance rates in our food banks every day. I have no doubt that all of you sitting here in your ridings have seen the lineups at the food banks in your riding. And what I noticed in the last few years is how those lines have gotten longer and longer and longer. It's shocking to see that. And you know, people don't go there because they think it's a great way to get food. They go there because they've got to do it. It is a tough thing to have to do. And they do it out of necessity.
Some are veterans.
Do it out of necessity. Some are veterans, exactly. A 2021 Feed Ontario Hunger Report found that 2/3 of people with disabilities had less than $100 to spend on food per month after paying for housing and utilities. In September, Statistics Canada showed that food prices have increased 10.4% over the year, the fastest pace since 1981. The increases hit meat, up to 8.8%, fresh fruit, up 10.7%, vegetables, up 11%. These are very difficult numbers for people living on almost nothing to deal with. It means their diets are radically restricted, are not what you need to actually be healthy, not what you need to actually have the energy to participate fully in daily life. Our caucus has repeatedly challenged the government's record of cuts to essential programs and its stealthy privatization of public services. In September, 5 MPPs from our caucus undertook 2 weeks of advocacy to push the government to raise rates. Our members lived on $95.21 a week for food for 2 weeks. The initiative was an effort to understand the restrictions imposed on ODSP and OW recipients. Now, I have to say, and they recognized that the $95 allowed is more than many recipients spend on food after paying for other basic needs. Because I had people come and say to me, 95, they were doing pretty good. I don't have that much money. And I have to say, and I hope that a number of those who took part in this demonstration actually get a chance to speak today, because I know it had a big impact on them. They physically and emotionally felt it. While undertaking this initiative, members reached out to community groups and advocates to understand the real experience of people living on around $1,200 a month, consulted with recipients, advocates, and service providers about what's needed to vastly improve social assistance after a decade of frozen rates. In a period of high inflation, high cost of living, and low social assistance rates, we know that things need to change, and they need to change immediately. People cannot continue to live under such restrictive social assistance. Recipients need more flexibility with the funds they receive, and they need more funds. This is a wealthy society. No one should be living in desperation and hunger in this society, and yet they are. The government is in a position to change things, and they, morally speaking, should be changing things. My hope is the government members will vote in favour of this motion today, and the government will take on this issue and actually address the problem. Every member of the government should ask themselves, could I live on $1,200 a month? Actually, could I live on $773 a month? And if you're honest with yourself, you can't. You cannot do it. Change the law, change the rates. Thank you.